Hello, everyone. It's Hunt. Yeah, it's me. Back with another episode of Tabletop Recap. Today we have another dazzling part of our ongoing Dungeons and Dragons campaign, Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. Yes, beginning in this episode, they're still in Eltuel. And today we have with us our lovely DM, Big Boy Chungus. Say hello.
Hello.
Yeah, and he ran a very interesting game today. Like last time, I know we had to fill in a bunch of, 2 episodes ago, we had to fill in a bunch of stuff in the end. We had a lot of housekeeping that we'd been putting off because the episodes had been so long, and then the last session was almost all combat for this. So we were able to get this in pretty easily. But now we can do mostly roleplay. So the last session was mostly combat. This session, mostly roleplay. Fantastic. So let's do that D20 thing. You got a whole box of them right next to you. There you go. No, you can't have the orange one. It's already in my hand. That's why you can't find it.
4.
13.
All right. So why don't normally we just give it off to the DM, but why don't you kind of fill us in a little bit about where we are?
How about I do the characters instead, and then
Sure.
you can do the slight recap of last session.
Sure.
So our friend the Legend was not here today, so his character, which is a Tabaxi monk, not around. All right. We do have another cast of characters. Myastan Ballastar. What is he? Brass.
Brass Dragonborn.
Brass Dragonborn, Paladin of the Platinum Cadre, which worships Bahamut. And he was doing his thing. He's played by G. And then we also had Guinevere, who is played by Keocat. She is a Tabaxi druid, and she has a tressum that she stole from a noble that we murdered. And his name is Slobberchops. We often call him Slamberchamps. For no reason other than we're dying. Our brains are dying from lack of oxygen. And then we also have Corvus, played by Connor the Trading Card Goblin, and he is a half-elf warlock of the Raven Queen. He has himself a Raven familiar and also an imp that's often disguised as a raven, little impo, bimpo.
That's his familiar as part of his warlock pact.
We also have Lulu, who is like this tiny little holyphant that's their best bud. And there's also Rhea Mantlemore, who is an NPC. She is a Hell Rider and from Eltuel. And we kind of start this session off with a mother, her 2 kids, and then an orphan whose family was eaten by ghasts.
Yes.
I always want to say ghouls, but I know it's wrong.
Ghouls are basically guests on steroids.
Yeah. Ghouls are like that Mr. Sardonicus swag. That William Castle swag. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know if I am.
Gimmicky movies from the 50s.
Yeah, I'm not as culturally invested in those as you are.
Yeah, I only brought it up because I knew you wouldn't.
I'm sure it's a great reference. I just don't know what it is.
Fantastic film. I'll show it to you sometime. But we got that's our cast of characters. I didn't leave anyone out, did I?
Nope, I don't think so. You talking about Corvus?
Yeah, I talked about Corvus.
Mystan, Guinevere,
And Lulu.
and Lulu. That's...
Rhea and just the random refugees.
Yep. So, quick recap from our last session. Our players fought their way through Eltuel on the east side of the city, making their way to the High Hall, which is the large cathedral in the center of the city. Then they had some encounters with some other demons and devils. And they eventually did make it there after rescuing some other NPCs and civilians. Then, once they made it to the High Hall, they fought a couple of hellhounds and proceeded to enter where they fought other demons and their minions, including a white Abishai in charge of some human cultists, some hellhounds led by a Muragon, and a barbed devil leading a pack of infernal-looking crabs.
Yeah, that's it was Crit Crab.
Hello, everyone. Ah!
Hello, everyone. Crit-Crab here. Ah! They got me!
So, they successfully fought their way through the cathedral and ended all the demonic and devil threats. And then, through searching for all the other survivors, they came across a druid, halfling, who informed them that all the other survivors had been sent to the underground catacombs for their safety. And this druid, whose name is...
Small Chungus.
Yeah, he's a Seltern O'Branch.
Get it? Because he's a druid. Branch. That's comedy, dude. That's like top tier comedy, man.
I would laugh, but I've read this section of the book like 15 times.
Top tier.
So he tells them that they're in the catacombs somewhere, but I was playing dead while everything was going on, so I don't know exactly how to get down there. And they wind up searching, and they find it, and a secret hidden passageway underneath an altar to Torm, which leads down into the area below the catacombs, or below the cathedral into the catacombs, and that's where our session begins. So moving on from there, they go down and they do a little bit of exploring. I'm glad they got to see a little bit of the catacombs before pressing forward with the story. And first thing they see is a couple of alcoves which hold some sarcophagi for high-ranking Elchuel members. And Connor, as Corvus, discovered a little stash of hidden treasure.
He basically robbed a grave.
Kinda, yeah.
Like you mentioned, it was like something a thief hid there, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, there was a little hidden treasure stash that a thief most likely would have left.
But I didn't know that was there. I kind of know all the big story beats and the NPCs and stuff, but little things like that I don't know about because I'm only assistant DM. And he took that from like a slot in the wall in the catacombs, and I was like, did he just rob a grave? Did he just rob a grave? Because I don't know if you guys know this, I'm a mortuary science major, so I was like, grave robbing, whoa.
So it's actually kind of funny because he needs to be glad that Rhea Mantelmore wasn't there, because she's like, you see these, when you go down here, touch nothing.
Yeah, she wouldn't let the group Tressum eat a corpse.
Because Slobber Chops, we learned. So let me don't I won't get too far ahead of myself. So after Corvus kind of goes off on his own a little bit to pillage this grave, they come to a larger area, which is like the grand ceremony burial room for all the former high priests of Elchuel. And Slobber Chops is pawing at one of the more ornate sarcophagi, I guess you could say, which Guinevere says, I want to cast Speak with Animal, and I want to figure out what he's doing. And I say, okay, go ahead and do that. And I know some people are saying, but Big Boy Chungus, Tressums are monsters, not animals. Speak with Animals doesn't work on them. And to that I say, I'm the god of this universe, and I'll say what goes.
Yeah, like, it's... Who cares? Like, obviously you wouldn't want to talk to, like, a frog Ahemoth, right? But a cute little Tressum that's the party pet anyways? Come on.
Especially since most monsters are just fused animals with magic by horribly mad wizards. You know, they're animals in origin anyway. Anyways, but so she discovers that Slobber Chops, who sounds like Sake Cloud from the Venture Bros, by the way, wants to get into the sarcophagus to eat the jerky that is secretly hidden behind the door, not realizing as a Tressum that it's just a corpse with fermented human flesh. And so Guinevere asks Rhea, she says, hey, what's behind these doors? And she said, oh, these are the resting places of our high archbishops and high priests. Why do you ask? He says, well, my cat wants to get in there and wants to know if she can have some of the meat that's back there. And she says, no, we will not permit animals from desecrating and devouring the corpses of our beloved dead? Absolutely not.
And then Keocat messaged me on Facebook, and she was like, if Rhea wasn't there, I would feed that person to my cat. I don't give a feck.
And then Maya Stan kind of checks out another separate alcove room.
It's a good thing she didn't open it, though, because wouldn't the mummies have...
There, out of the 6 coffins, or sarcophagi, one of them has a mummy, which, while it is only a challenge rating 3 enemy, has a curse that can one-shot people.
Yeah.
But Maya Stan decided to check out another separate room, and he discovered a small child. And this child was separated from the other survivors, and he basically told them that when we all got into the catacombs, my mom and dad got separated from me, and I couldn't find them, and all I could think was to hide and not let the monsters find me. And so he said, well, why don't we go find your parents? Do you have any idea where they, like, which direction they could be? And he said, well, I thought I heard voices coming from down the hall, and he points like the opposite direction from whence they came. And so they decided to go check out the other end of the catacombs, where they find the grand holding area where everyone's cowering and hiding and hoping that this all goes away.
Yeah, and there was something kind of relevant that happened within all that. So when Slobber Chops tried to get in the sarcophagus, and Keocat was like, you can't do that, she gave Slobber Chops a treat, and he was like, this is disgusting. How dare you offer me this?
She gave him specifically a chicken liver that she had purchased from a vendor before coming here. And
yeah, salted chicken liver.
Slobber Chops has already had a similar... He's already had chicken liver before, so he loves it. There was no question about it, whether he wanted it after she gave it to him. But he ate about half of it before spitting it up. And just... You don't even have to have the speak with animals spell going on to know that Slobber Chops was not pleased with this. He said, what is this garbage? I refuse to swallow this.
And then they gave... Maya Stan gave the child a little bit of food to feed Slobber Chops so that Slobber Chops would let the child cuddle him for comfort. And Slobber Chops didn't like it either.
He literally was hesitant to eat the food because of the gizzard. And he took a small nibble from the ration bar. Then he licked it, decided he really didn't like it, and just kind of... You know how like those cats will get really grumpy-looking faces when they're just displeased in general? He had that face going on for a while. But they do find the main group of people, and there's a big section of roleplay that proceeds. The first thing that happens is... they are met by a gray-haired woman with a ceremonial mace and a leather-bound book that she is holding on to like her life depends on it.
They never ask her name. She has one. They just don't ask her.
Yeah.
Which I also forget to do when I play. I'm not going to lie. I'm bad about asking names. Which is why I often play characters that just don't care about people's names, like Kabuto Diend and Gaddock McMoneyhaver. I forgot his last name for a sec.
No, you got it right. But she tells them that, you don't look like devils or monsters. Who are you and what are you doing here? And they introduce themselves, and they get to Rhea and Lulu, and they're happy to see the adventurers, don't get me wrong, but they're just happy to see a living Hell Rider who is like one of their sworn protectors and elite soldiers, as well as a holy fan who's a literal angelic creature. Like, oh, our prayers have been answered. We're here to be saved. And something was said by one of the players, and she said, you must have been sent by the High Overseer Thavius Krieg. Happy days. We knew he would answer our prayers and send forth salvation.
And then there was this long silence. Like, the players literally did not know what to say. And Maya Stan was like, yeah!
And the thing about it is Rhea has already been telling the other civilians that they've rescued that, yeah, Thavius Krieg is, out there looking for us, despite the fact that she cut his head in two earlier because he literally sold everybody to the devil.
Yeah.
And then the straw that broke the camel's back for Rhea was the priestess held up this leather-bound book, which was, in fact, the tome of... It was... Hold on one second. What was it called?
It's like...
It was the Tome of the Creed Resolutes, which is basically the book of oaths that all Hell Riders have to take in order to become Hell Riders. They put their hand in a book, swear an oath of allegiance to the city of Elturel, and then their name magically appears in the book saying, okay, now you're an official Hell Rider, welcome to the club. But what people didn't realize before this was this book is literally a list of names that jots people's names down for Thavius Krieg to send him to hell. It's literally just a written record of who Thavius gets to send to Zariel and say, okay, here's payment. And when she holds the book up, Rhea can't take it anymore, and she whips her sword out and she hits the book. And the book's magical, so she can't cut it in half, but she knocks it out of the woman's hand like, this is such bull crap. I can't stand to hear this anymore. And she pronounces to them, I don't know if my speech was good or not, but she told everybody the truth about how Thavius Krieg was not their savior. He sold them down the river Styx so that he could reserve a spot in Hell's upper echelon, and that they are here because of his wrongdoings and everything else. And it goes dead silent in the catacombs. Like, everyone's like, oh my god.
And Maestan was like, can I talk to you for a second? Pulls her to the side and he's like, what's wrong with you, lady? Hope and faith is like all they have. And there's like this big convo, which of course Corvus had to interrupt for some reason. I don't remember why. Because he was like, hey, let's arm these people and send them out to fight devils in the street. These poor, starving peasants.
Who are non-combatants, by the way. These are commoners. They have no military experience.
Yeah, their stat blocks are nothing.
Yeah, most of them aren't even fight-worthy people. They're mostly housewives, skilled workers, and carpenters, and other people of skills.
Bunch of children.
A lot of children. It was not a good idea. But the main conflict between Maestan and Rhea was Maestan said, look, I don't like lying either, but if it's going to keep people's hopes up and get them through a hard situation, I say lie your butt off. And Rhea's like, you don't know the people of Elturel like I do. Lying to them will only make things worse in the long run, and through the truth they will gain their resolve and find the rage to fight back on their own. It's a pretty good little roleplay moment, I thought. And then Corvus had talked about starting an uprising by arming peasants. And then
they were like, why? Like, what's going to happen if they let's say they kill every devil in Elturel? They're still in the center of Avernus. They could just get swarmed 10 times as strong.
At this point, the gray-haired priestess approaches them, and she doesn't interject herself, but she tells them how people feel and what's going on. And basically, the feeling was that Corvus argued that, this is your home turf. You know this place better than the back of your hand. You can totally take a bunch of demons in a fight. And she said, yeah, this is our home city, but where is the home city located at? In the homeland of the devils.
And it's mostly destroyed, and what's not destroyed has been warped by demonic forces.
And unlike the devils, the population of Elturel is declining, unable to be replenished. In fact, actually, a lot of the people who are dying in Elturel are being reborn as devils in the river Styx below because their souls are connected to the contract that Zariel signed.
Exactly.
So, eventually, essentially, time is of the essence. Either the people of Elturel will be freed soon, or they will join the devil horde. And simply throwing their lives away will not solve anything. And while this was going on, Guinevere had another good little roleplay moment with a bunch of kids. After Rhea dropped the biggest truth bomb on these people, it was a lot of despair. And to kind of help a little bit, Lulu and Slobberchops went over to an alcove where a bunch of children were kind of moping about, and they started playing together, trying to cheer them up, which you can only imagine how cute that would have looked.
Oh, Lulu and Slobberchops. Best pals.
And so Guinevere walks over, and I just tell her that the two of them are playing, and she says, I want to use them to put on a puppet show. And I thought, oh, this is going to be awesome. And I gave her two options. I said, okay, you could, if I'll give you two things you can do. You could either tell me a story, and whatever it is you happen to do with the puppets, Slobberchops and Lulu, you can go ahead and automatically pass. But if you just want to go ahead and save some time, I'll let you roll a performance check, and we'll make something up depending on whether or not you pass or fail. And she did succeed, and I had a little Spork and Bork reference in there. with the goblin puppet and the troll doll. But she succeeded, and as a reward for passing a skill check, one of the children gave her a pendant because the children were distracted from the horribleness that was their current situation. And she received a Charm of Feather Falling, which, when activated, gives you 10 days worth of the Feather Fall spell ability uninterrupted. In which time, after 10 days, it just kind of goes away.
Yeah, very fun. And that's not something that's actually in the module. That's something you threw in because the group was like, why don't we get any magic items? And we were like, because you walk past every single one of them.
And there's nothing I gave them today that was super OP. Like, nothing game breaking unless you just can somehow manage to be super creative.
Especially my stand, since you forgot to give him something.
He never found any, and he didn't bother to look. Or at least when he did look, he wasn't in a place where there weren't any to be found. And there were plenty of magical items. It's just a certain other player decided to hog them.
We'll talk about that.
But anyway,
funny.
So the role play occurred, and basically the gray-haired woman, after some more RP, told them that, okay, if you're looking to figure out what's going on, we're supposed to be hearing back from older Ravengard at some point. And they were like, wait, Ravengard is here? And they said, well, he was. We told him about this artifact called the Helm of Torm's Sight that's located in the Grand Cemetery. And he was supposed to go there, find it, use it, and then figure out more information about our current situation. Because basically what the Helm of Torm's Sight does is it allows you to commune directly with Torm. And he can give you kind of like some omniscient visions about your environment, history, other stuff.
Dope.
So they were hoping to use that artifact to figure out how to solve getting out of Avernus. But older Ravengard's been gone for an abnormally long amount of time, and they're worried that something bad's happened to him. And they ask the players if they can go look for him and make sure he's okay. They do agree, but the gray-haired priestess also offers to give them what little supplies they have left for their little journey across the rest of the city, and also gives them an opportunity for a long rest. A long rest. Which, before everyone decided to go to sleep for a little while, because the sun never sets in Avernus. In fact, you would argue there is no sun. It's just constant twilight. Everyone got a chance to eat some food before they got an exhaustion level. And that's when I revealed to them why Slobberchops was not eating the tasty victuals that he is so normally accustomed to. And it's because Avernus warps the physical and magical abilities and properties of almost everything, including making what should be tasty food taste god-awful.
Yeah, you foreshadowed that extremely well, my dude.
And then after their long rest, let me see here. They then proceeded to leave the High Hall, and before they did, they also passed the druid that they met earlier. And he was in a bit of a funk. He was kind of depressed because he had told the party at that time that he earlier was helping the people out as best he could, but at this point he could feel his magical abilities waning, and he thought that it was because, I'm in hell, my connection to the nature goddess and her power is waning. I don't know how much longer I can go on doing this. Which they did a very good job of figuring out what was going on exactly. And it turns out that Hyoket is also a druid, and she's not experiencing any of these problems. And so...
She rolled a nat 20.
Yeah, and so basically she said, like, there's nothing wrong with this dude's magical power. He's basically in a funk because of how depressing everything is, and because he's losing confidence in himself, his magical power is not as effective as it used to be.
Opa depression style.
And so she tried a persuasion check to try and cheer him up, to make him more optimistic, and she didn't fail horribly.
It was like a 10, right?
Yeah, basically, this guy said, I'm going to try, but it was kind of like a half-hearted try. He didn't exactly feel a big confidence boost that he needed. And then they left. So from there...
I'm surprised they didn't try to convince him to go with.
Oh, well.
Because Corvus loves trying to convince people to fight for them.
And so from there, they leave High Hall, and they're on the way to the Grand Cemetery. And on the way, they have a little encounter with a halfling and an imp. And originally, the imp and the halfling did not know what was going on. The imp was trying to convince the halfling, who happened to be a baker at the time, that if he signed his soul over to him on a contract, that he would give his family a month's worth of food. Really good role-playing opportunity, but someone decided to go in guns blazing. And Corvus decided that the better situation would be just to blast the imp where he stood. And so
Which I told you would happen. Dude, I told this guy step by step what was going to happen this whole session, and every bit of it came true. Every single thing I said came true.
And so the imp's holding out the contract like, come on, what you got to lose? Sign the contract. And then, blam!
Just explodes.
Yeah, the only thing that's left of him is his hand that's holding the quill in the contract, which just flops to the ground. And the halfling, who is also a non-combatant, just looks horrified like, what was that? And for whatever reason, Corvus thought he was a bad guy. He says, I want to walk up to him with like an intimidating swagger walk, and then I want to do an intimidation check. And he's like, who are you and what are you doing with that imp? And you better start talking or I'm going to hurt you. And he's like, please don't hurt me. I was just trying to feed my family. I don't know what's going on. And so, Myastan shows up after Corvus successfully intimidates this poor guy, and he's like, Corvus, shut up. Sir, don't listen to this guy. He's an idiot. And Myastan asks him what's going on, and the guy tells him, he says, well, I'm a baker here in the city, and my family and I have been hiding in our shop for a while, but we've recently run out of food, and I had to stray out into the street to try and find stuff to take care of them with. I came across this little imp, and he said that, for a small fee, I could feed my family for a month. And Corvus was like, hey, you mind if I see that contract? And the guy's like, yeah, sure.
Because Myastan was just going to rip it up, and Corvus was like, I want to read it.
And so I have him roll an intelligence check, because this is not just, hey, I give you food, you give me your soul, deal's a deal. There's a lot of lawyer-worthy fine print in this thing. And Corvus succeeds on an intelligence check, and he basically surmises that it's not just soul for food. He says, if you sign this contract, he'll give you a month's worth of food, mostly bland, tasteless garbage. And in return, you will sign over the souls of not only yourself, but your entire family. His wife and 6 children included. 6
children. Oof. Imagine pushing 6 children out of halfling hips.
I didn't say they were all born as sextuplets.
I didn't say it once either.
Oh, okay. This look of both relief and horror washes over the halfling's face, because he realized he very close came to signing over his family's lives.
And then Myastan had some PSA end of a freaking Sailor Moon or G.I. Joe episode thing where he was like,
remember, kids, never sign a deal with the devil. It'll always come back to bite you. Gotcha, understood.
Oh my!
And then Myastan decided to rip up the contract, and I said, "Okay, you tear it up. This does not require a strength check, but just so you know, this does not tear and rip like a crisp piece of parchment. This actually has a bit of a resistance and a bit of a squelch to it. And upon further investigation, you realize that this is a contract written on halfling flesh."
Nice.
And Corvus said, of course it is, because nothing can be freaking civil in this universe.
Of jorts, absolutely of jorts.
So Rhea, they offered...
Rhea left.
She did, and the reason why she left is the halfling's problem was still prevalent. He said, thank you for preventing me from signing a bad deal, but my family still has no food to feed themselves with, and we're in danger. And they're like... He's like, can you escort us anywhere? And they said, well, we're currently in a bit of a time crunch. High Hall is that way. And he said, well, is it safe to go that way? There's devils and all kinds of evils lurking around every corner. I can't just up and pull my family out and pull them into a dangerous area. And so Rhea says, I tell you what, you guys go on ahead. I'll make sure that they get back to High Hall safely, and we'll reconvene after you save Ravengard.
Yeah, I didn't know she was going to leave there. I knew she was going to leave this session, permanently. And I thought that was the permanent leave. And I was like, Okay. I guess it's happening now.
I guess it really just depends on. They could have just totally left that guy standing there high and dry, but they decided not to. And Rhea would not be the kind of person to just abandon innocent civilians like that.
They needed her, though. Ooh.
They needed her.
Those morons needed her so bad.
So they do make it to the Grand Cemetery, where the box description basically tells them that it is a incredibly large cemetery, massive, like Arlington Cemetery from DC levels of big. And many of the graves were both open, dug up, and the headstones were destroyed. And but there were surprisingly no enemies. And after doing some perception checks, they saw this army of undead just littering and shuffling about the premises. And this is where things kind of started to devolve strategically, I guess you could say.
This part took so long.
Well, so the first thing that happens is Corvus decided to call up the Raven Queen, which
no, that's not the first thing that happened. The first thing that happened was they just sat staring at these zombies and skeletons and talking about them for 10 minutes.
Which I do my best to try not interrupt. I try to not repeat the same mistake twice, like that time where I took a role-playing element away from D Legend in the Vandenborg household. So I want to make sure that the players have enough time to role-play and talk amongst each other. But at a certain point, I need to get a better sense of when role-playing ends and just rambling begins.
Yeah, and you use slobber chops to give them clues when they're stuck. That's a very effective way to use slobber chops, because you just had slobber chops like just kind of walk through them and then like start playing around with intestines they were dragging around.
Yeah, he was like batting arms that were hanging on by tendons, and
Yeah.
he was literally playing with the zombies, and the zombies paid no attention to him.
And this was your way of saying these zombies won't bother you. They're not, because the thing is, the zombies are just looking out for demons, and that's it.
Yeah, they have been charged by their necromancer that there is a specific enemy type that you have to look out for. Everything else just ignore. I'll deal with.
And it's true that the players don't know this, of course, but they also like don't pay any attention to what Slobber Chops is doing. And you were like, okay, Keocat, Slobber Chops is doing this thing, so now are you going to do anything? And she was like, no, just let the baby play. And then they went back to talking about how to get by the zombies, and you're actively showing them how to get by the zombies. They think you're just doing it for flavor, but every time you say Slobber Chops does something, it's because it's a hint. Otherwise,
We'd be here
Keocat's...
forever.
Yeah,
we
otherwise...
would be that party that stayed in the beginning tavern for 10 sessions.
Yeah, that funny parody article we read recently.
But so then the players... There's a little bit of... I will give Connor props this. He got kind of creative, and I kind of like the randomness of the situation. So he says he wants to do some recon. And I say, okay, well, how are you going to do that? He says, I want to call up the Raven Queen. And so he does, and he pulls out the Raven, talks to it on a phone, which, again, is a fun gag. And she picks up, which I've learned now that I'm severely going to have to reduce the amount of time that Connor talks to her.
He stayed on the line with her for like 30 minutes real time, at least. And then she was on the line the entire fight as well.
And I'm just going to have to... One, she's a patron god, so she's busier, super busy. She shouldn't be able to talk to a single mortal for that long of a period of time.
Yeah.
I've learned that now.
She's got a bunch of warlocks, a bunch of worshippers. Like, there needs to be like a percentile to see if she's busy or something.
Yeah, so Connor's... He's going to have to learn to either interpret the will of his patron a little bit more on his own, or just face the fact that the Raven Queen doesn't always have time for him.
Or you can just start giving him metaphorical stuff from her, like gods and stuff often do.
And so what I did is the Raven Queen does not have a clear line of sight into Avernus. She can see things going on in the Shadowfell, the Feywild, and the Material Plane, because they're basically just the same realm of existence that overlap with each other, like a color spectrum. But Avernus is a completely different universe. So she's a little bit blind, even though her followers can still somewhat connect to her. So Corvus calls her up, and says, hey, I'm in this giant cemetery. There's a ton of undead. Could be something that you would not be pleased with, either necromancer or life and death altering relations. Is there anything you can do to help me? And just to kind of add flavor, I had the Raven Queen send him a little item through the Spectral Raven's throat. And it's this crystal eyeball with a milky white center. And basically the Raven Queen can use this as like a seeing glass, where when Connor points the eye at things, she can see it directly.
It's pretty cool.
It has no real combat or roleplay element other than just, okay, the Raven Queen can kind of see what you're doing. Other than that, nothing else. And upon reaching level 6, he unlocked a new ability where, I will give him props for this was very creative, where he is able to basically transport himself into his Raven spirit. So now what he's done is he can now fly around at will as a spectral raven, and he's put the eye that his Raven Queen gave him in his mouth. So now he's like a flying three-eyed raven who can commune directly with his patron so long as she answers.
And a raven carrying something shiny around isn't even suspicious. It's just normal.
No. And so I gave him props for stealth, and he got a whole lay of the land. He saw exactly how many undead there were. He got a good look inside the cathedral, which turns out there were a bunch of monsters, also undead in there. He saw a pit that was basically spawning the undead, and I think he got the impression that the pit was just spawning them out of thin air. Really how the pit works is whenever a undead creature is thrown into the pit, it takes an hour for the mist to set into it, and then it automatically generates it as an undead.
You mean a corpse?
A corpse, that's what I meant.
Yeah, corpse thrown in, which is what I assumed in the first place, because there were all the dug-up graves.
And basically what... and then there's this outer building, which is kind of like a secondary home for like the caretakers of the chapel to live in originally, but it's also where the necromancer is making his headquarters, essentially. And Corvus uses the Raven to go to this outer building, and it's got stained glass windows, but there's no clear line of sight in, so he kind of like puts the Raven right up against the window, seeing if he can make anything out. And there's candlelight, so he can see silhouettes and shadows, but nothing clear. And so he sees some movement, and he can discern that there is a figure in there who waves his hands, and after doing so, makes the inner part of the outer building go dark. And what he didn't realize is that this figure knew that he was being watched, figured it was someone who had connections to undead or
demons
in something.
He thought they were demon people. He actually openly said that.
Yeah, he thought they were demons, and he cast the darkness spell so they couldn't spy on him. And Corvus then flies back and relays all this information to the party. Well, what they don't realize...
But he didn't realize he cast darkness. He was like, he waved at me. He wanted me to come in. And it was like, no, he just cast a spell.
And that wasn't secret information. Had he made an Arcana check to see, okay, what just happened, I could have alluded to that.
Yeah, it like wasn't suspicious to him that everything went pitch black in an instant.
And so he goes back and tells everybody. And a little bit of background information. While the party's doing all this, the figure in the outer building is in fact the necromancer. He is a undead lich by the name of Gideon Lightward, who is a former priest of Torm. He was one of the caretakers of the cathedral of the garden, or not the garden, the graveyard, but he was corrupted by Zariel because he saw that the Eltuels were becoming corrupt and they weren't supporting any attacks on demons directly, and she basically told him, is like, they're not your supporters, they don't want you to vanquish evil, they want you to suffer and fall and blah blah blah. And he bought all that. And so rather than being a priest of Torm, he became a necromancer to Zariel because he wanted to directly fight demons in the Blood War. Wish granted.
Yeah, I guess so.
And so after Corvus leaves with his raven, he leaves the outbuilding and goes back into the cathedral to kind of set up his ploy. And when Corvus comes back, they continue to talk. Slobber Chops is now at this point straight up running in between zombie legs and gnawing on their arms. It's ridiculous how close he's getting to these zombies. They still don't realize
Everyone's still standing in the same spot, by the way. The only one that's moved is Connor, and he came right back. They're just standing there. And it's like, guys, come on.
And so finally, and this was Gideon's plan. He did not fully understand who it was who was watching him. He just figured that there was someone just out of his sight trying to spy on him. So while the players were continuing to kind of just ramble on about what they were going to do, I tell them, I say, okay, you guys notice that while you're discussing this stuff, the zombies begin to shift, like in an organized manner. And they very strategically move and shamble out of the way so that there is a clear path for them to follow to the chapel. Like, they literally part like the Red Sea for these guys. And Gideon's plan was to give them an opening to come to him so that he could surround them with the undead and then interrogate them. But no, there was nothing suspicious to this, apparently.
Yeah, they were like, well, that's a trap. We're just not going to do it. It's like, oh my god, guys, if it was a trap, it would have happened immediately. This is the DM telling you, move!
And so Corvus takes all the information that he gained earlier, and he says he's going to sit up top on top of the chapel, and the other guys are going to go investigate the outer building, which is locked, but Myastan is a tough boy, and so he decides just to kick the door down, which he did absolutely well. And they discover that Gideon's journal, which, according to them, after about 10 minutes of reading, they learn that Gideon is a madman. He used to be a good guy, now he's a bad guy corrupted by evil, and all he wants to do is kill demons.
Gideon's a madman, help us, save us. You didn't think you were going to get a Spy Kids reference today, but you did.
Yeah.
God, I haven't seen that in years.
Cringy movie, but an excellent meme gold mine.
It's a fun film. I really enjoy it. Anyways, let's get back to this.
And so they also took so long in that outbuilding. Connor's like, I ready Eldritch Blast in case something happens. And Guinevere wanted to talk to some rats and Slobberchops to try and see if they could get some more information. And I hope they didn't think I was being rude by not giving them a lot of information with the rats, because Guinevere has talked to rats before from the Dungeon of the Dead 3, but even with that time, rats they've got like 1 intelligence point. They are not going to give you a lot of details on stuff. They can tell you like, oh, I've seen a living creature here, or I saw something that resembled food earlier.
I think she just likes talking to cute little animals. I mean, she works with rats for a living.
Yeah,
so
and this wasn't her fault. She talked to the rat, and the rat pretty much told her everything she could. And then she's like, she says, "Can I talk to Slobberchops too?" And I said, "Yes. When you cast Speak with Animals, you can talk to all animals for like the next minute." And Slobberchops, all he's doing is he's literally doing this Tom and Jerry routine with one of the rats that's in this room, and he's not giving any useful information. He's like, "Yes, I just wish to play with the victuals." And so Myastan and all of them are just talking and rambling about what's in this journal. Like, we get it. I've just told you a little bit about Gideon. They didn't even learn his name. They didn't know his name was Gideon until they got back to the High Hall.
Yeah, like I went to go number 2 and then I didn't even miss anything. And
so basically what I did is I said, okay, everyone roll a perception check. And they're like, okay. And they rolled average. Like, I think the highest roll was a 14. And I said, all right, you don't notice right away, but soon you kind of get the feeling that the groans and moaning of the undead outside are getting closer. And you look out and they are converging on your outbuilding.
Yeah, which once again isn't something from the module that they're supposed to do. They just wouldn't go anywhere or do anything.
So Corvus, I tell her, I said, okay, you guys have a minute before they're on top of you. You got to make a decision about what you're going to do. And so Connor was already up on top of the chapel, so he was good. Guinevere, with Slobberchops, climbed up using her climbing speed and joined him. And then
another thing that happened was Corvus actively percepted Gideon telling these two bug devils. I forget what they're called.
So those weren't actually devils. Those were part of a species known as the Loths. And the Loths are fiends that were created by night hags thousands and thousands of years ago to basically be servants and mercenaries to demons and devils, whoever would be the highest bidder. Because hags are super good negotiators, and they just like playing both sides of the fence.
Yeah, but they were like, "What do you want us to do with them, boss?" And he was like, let's just like box them in here and interrogate them and see why they're here. Because they're being suspicious. They're wandering around and like watching him from a distance, and it's like, of course he's suspicious.
Yeah, and Gideon thinks that they're devils, and if they're not devils, maybe
demons.
Not devils, demons. He thinks that they're possibly demons, and if not demons, they may be demon supporters, and he wants to like have any excuse to slay them. But if it turns out that they could be useful, he might keep them around for a minute or two. So he's not out to kill them yet. But my stand is on the ground, and he doesn't know where to go. And I say, okay, you got to decide now. Like, next 15 seconds, what are you going to do? Because the undead are going to be on you. And he says, okay, I'm going to try and run past them. And I said, okay, I need you to make me 3 athletic checks. Because they're not so close that you can't just barrel through them, but you are running out of time very quickly. And so he succeeds on all of his strength checks, and he gets through them. And he says, okay, I guess I'm running to the outer porch of the chapel, but he doesn't go in. He just stands on the porch, and I'm like, okay,
of course he does.
You're on the porch. What do you do now? And he says, I guess I go through the doors. And I'm like, okay, you do that. And as you do this, there are 4 Minotaur skeletons with great axes waiting for you. What happens? And then Connor went through this whole plan about how he was going to like ambush him and everything, which I patiently listened to.
Yeah, he wanted to cave in the ceiling.
Yeah, with his shatter spell, and then he wanted to surprise the necromancer with a bunch of holy water that he had accumulated from earlier.
Honestly, not a bad plan, but at the same time you were actively signaling like this can be talked out, and it should be talked out. You can get stuff from this guy. There's no threat to you right now. And he's like, I'm gonna collapse the roof on him and dump holy water. It's like, okay, dude.
And so when my stand bursts through the door, Corvus is like, now! And through like a hole in the roof that gives him access to the rafters.
A hole he collapsed.
Yeah. He then casts Shatter on the rafters above the Mesoloth guards and Gideon, who is waiting in this separate part of the cathedral building, and collapses on him. The Mesoloths get kind of trapped a little bit, but they're not super worried. But Gideon, who's like this undead necromancer, is like bobbing and weaving through rubble to safety. And then combat starts. And Gideon's like, forget the interrogation. Kill him now!
Yep.
And then proceeds... The combat lasted for about an hour. I don't usually like hour-long combats, but this...
It was at least an interesting combat.
Yeah.
Poor Kyo Cat. She, like, jumps down and rushes the necromancer. And then, like, everyone else is like, we're gonna fight skeletons.
Well, the first thing that happened was my stand hit the necromancer. No, first off, Corvus hit the necromancer with 2 vials of holy water, which did a huge chunk of damage because undead have a weakness against radiant damage.
Yeah, and it's good that they were using radiant on him because every turn of his that he ends after he doesn't take radiant damage before it, he gets 10 hit points back from damage. So radiant was extra helpful on this guy.
Yes, and my stand being a paladin and then all the holy water that they took from the high hall really came in handy. But for some reason, after like the second turn, Guinevere, because see, Corvus attacked the necromancer, my stand attacked the necromancer, and then Guinevere attacked the necromancer. Like, they were on the right track, because I don't know who all is familiar with this, but necromancers are basically like radio broadcasters controlling remote-controlled flesh wagons. And if you kill the necromancer, their control over the undead goes away.
Yeah, and so then Guinevere attacks him and everyone's all like, bye. And they just peace out and start fighting skeletons. And she sent me a message because she didn't want to say it in front of everybody. She does that a lot. She's very anxious. I wish she would
say stuff in front of everybody because so much of what she says makes sense. It's competent ideas.
She's just so anxious and feels like she can't
I'll say it right now. Some of the players, 2 in particular, were acting kind of dumb.
She was like, I thought they were going to back me up. This is the main guy. Why aren't we fighting the main guy? And I was like, why doesn't your character, like, shout that? Shout, hey, I need a hand over here. Let's take this guy out first. He's the big threat. Why doesn't your character just shout that? And she was like, oh, I don't want to bother anybody. And I was like, oh, you poor woman. Oh, my goodness. You poor, sweet, innocent thing.
She is so sweet.
She's too good for this world.
So the fight continues for about 5 rounds, and you got to remember this is probably the largest initiative count that I've done to date so far, because you have Corvus, Myastan, Guinevere, who in turn are controlling an Imp, a Spectral Raven, and Slaver Chops. You have the Necromancer, 2 Measoloths, Lulu, and then 4 Skeleton Minotaurs. So that's 12 character NPCs that are just going at it.
And I also predicted this 100% as well.
Yes.
I told you they wouldn't talk to him at all, and they would immediately attack him.
And
I predicted this whole session.
And we almost lost some players. Like, I think Myastan by the end said that after all the hits he took, because Guinevere was the only character trying to heal herself throughout the whole fight, trying to stay alive. She fought harder than anyone else, in my opinion.
She really did. She was doing like 2 attacks a turn and using all her spell slots to heal herself. Because she's fighting this kind of mini-boss by herself.
She's fighting a mini-boss and a Minotaur skeleton by herself.
Oh, that's right. There was also a skeleton fighting her. I totally forgot.
By the way, these Minotaurs, they don't have multi-attack. They're not super high-level undead. But they deal 17 damage for every hit, basically.
Yeah.
Which, for those of you who don't know, that at this point is like anywhere between a quarter to a third of their base HP. Like, if they had gone after the Necromancer, the fight could have been over in like 2 or 3 turns, especially after the Holy Water sneak attack. But when they started getting sidetracked with the Minotaurs, I'm like, you guys do not have advantage in the initiative economy, like the turn economy, and you are not doing as much damage as these guys are going to do to you. You guys cannot outlast this fight.
And Corvus is sniping from the hole in the ceiling, which is smart. But these 2 bug guys can teleport, and they each have 3 attacks a turn.
Yeah, so basically, the Measoloths, unlike whereas the Minotaur skeletons are bruisers that are really slow, the Measoloths are really fast. They have 2 legs and 4 arms that wield a trident that basically has reach. So in pure melee combat, they have the advantage because they have longer weapons. And they can also teleport wherever they want to within 60 feet of each other. So that makes them really easy it makes it really easy for them to get out from underneath the rubble, and almost killed Corvus because they closed the distance and they're like, surprise!
Got him! And then no one's on the roof to help him, which is the other thing.
Slobber Chops he was just watching.
That's the thing about Connor's sniping, because like it's not a bad idea until someone gets up there with you, and then all these melee characters can do nothing to help you. That's the only problem with it.
But that was the one weakness to the Measoloths with Connor, is that because they had reach weapons, they did not have to be within 5 feet to attack him, and because they were not within 5 feet, they did not give Corvus disadvantage for close range, the close range penalty. So he was able to cast Eldritch Blast. He knocked one of the Measoloths off of the top of the tower, which he took the force damage from the Eldritch Blast and then took 2d6s of falling damage from falling off the 20-foot tall building.
Yeah.
So that was really clever.
Yeah, that was good. He's always trying to use the force push to his advantage, which is really good. And here's one good thing I really want to give Connor props for this. When combat's going on, he's the only one that spends the time between his turns thinking of what he's going to do on his next turn.
And that really comes into play, he loves strategy games like Warhammer, Civ, any type of turn-based.
Plays a lot of Total War and stuff.
Yeah, and that's great. My brother does that too, and we're all kind of getting into it a little bit. So that's really helping him, and he's utilizing that type of strategy to really good effect.
Yeah,
I just
because
kind of wish he wouldn't repeat some of the steps in his plans 4 different times.
but you got to give him props because
And I
as soon
do.
as you're like, all right, Corvus, it's your turn. He's like, all right, here's what I want to do, and he lays the whole thing out. And when you ask anyone else, it's like, all right, what you want to do?
I want to hit him with my hammer.
After 30 seconds of silence.
Um,
I mean, just a regular attack is totally fine, but like it takes them 10 seconds to even decide to do that.
but so eventually the fight carries on to the 5th round, and the necromancer has actually been knocked out of the chapel by a physical attack, and he's running around the outside. And for every turn that goes by that he's not fighting, no one's dealing radiant damage to him. So of course he's
getting HP.
He's getting HP back, and so eventually he climbs back in when he feels comfortable. And Lulu.
That's not what happened. Connor chased him back in.
Oh, that's right. He kept taking pot shots at him from the roof.
Yeah, so Connor was Eldritch blasting him after he knocked the bugs off the roof, and then the guy was like, well, I can't even reach him, so I'd rather fight inside where I got a bunch of backup and etc. and my attacks can hit. So he jumps back in, and then Lulu's like, nah.
Yeah, she's like a dadgum American Soldier War one with a pump shotgun. She's like, hello, boom, and hits him with a radiant powered trumpet blast, which alone you have to succeed on a saving throw from this trumpet blast, and if you fail, you immediately take like 25 radiant damage. But he's undead, and it's radiant, so it deals double damage, and she literally just dealt 50 damage to face.
Yeah, because she actually had a nat 1 and skipped her first round and stuff, and then you did kind of forget about her for a couple rounds. So she was mostly just giving other people boosts. And then I remember what she said. She was like, all right, bye-bye, Mr. Skeleton Man, and she just turns him to ash.
Lulu's over here with the kawaii anime face, and she just casually murks NPCs. But Lulu did get hurt a little bit. She only has a small health pool. Like, despite her trumpets, which she's already in that one session, she used all 3 of her trumpet blasts for the day, so she's spent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bad guy got some physical damage in on her, so she's hurting. And so Corvus. Or she asked Corvus after the fight was over, because once she murked him, all the undead collapsed. And the Mesoloths, they're mercenaries, so once the guy who's basically signing their paychecks got domed, they said, this ain't worth it, we're out.
Yeah, I remember he died, and then all his undead just fell to the floor. And my stand was like, I knew that would happen. And everyone was like, and we were like, no, you're
You're a liar.
You little lying turd. If you knew that would happen, you wouldn't have run away from him to fight the Minotaurs. You little liar.
And so the Mesoloths peace out because no one's paying them. They see no reason to fight, to continue to fight. And so then the players have a moment to recuperate. Corvus, who's been hoarding health potions like they're drugs or something.
Yeah, he's got 6 of them.
He purchased a ton of them before they left.
Which is smart.
Yeah, totally smart. But he also found a couple from the people at the High Hall, and he's like passing them out. He gives a couple to Maestan, who was at 1 HP, by the way.
And this dude can heal himself. He was just like, I was saving it for later. And I was like, dude, you're at 1 HP. What do you mean you were saving it for later, man? You needed it.
And his Lay on Hands ability can be used as a bonus action. It's not like he would waste his turn if he decided to heal himself right then and there. He can totally heal himself and then deal some damage.
Everyone was very weird in that combat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, except Connor, he did totally fine in that combat.
Yeah,
he just didn't focus on the mini boss. Is all.
At least he didn't focus on him until the very end.
I actually remember after they beat the boss and they were walking around, Geocat was like, I feel like there's a boss coming up and I'm not ready. And I was like, girl, you just fought the boss. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah, I remember what. So Lulu was given a health potion by Corvus, and there was this little RP moment where she was so thankful. She said, "Yay! Thank you for helping me. Does this mean we're friends now?" And Corvus is like, "Yeah, we can be friends." He says, "I want to hug Lulu," And I say, okay, you embrace Lulu, and she's like, all happy and yay, and then she says, yay, we're friends. Friends.
Yeah, that hug is one of the required things you have to do to get a memory out of her.
Technically don't have to, but I made it a requirement for a specific memory, because there's like
Yeah.
a memory table. Like, memories don't come back at certain intervals unless they pertain directly to the plot, but there are like some hints that you can unlock by doing certain friendly interactions with Lulu, and the hug was one of them that I had agreed upon.
Yeah.
With everything that was going on. And when this happened, Lulu unlocked a memory about, as she put it, a friend that she made in Avernus a long time ago, back when Zariel first fell. She said that, I remember a long time ago I met a guy by the name of Mahadi, a really friendly guy who helped me when I was at a low point in Avernus. And I don't remember where he is. I know he works in a caravan called the, what was it called? Just a second.
Yeah, I don't remember. I'm bad at names, man. I can't remember jack about anything ever.
It's the Wandering Emporium is what it's called.
Yeah.
She said, I know he works in a caravan called the Wandering Emporium. I don't know a specific location. I don't even remember what race he is. He could be a devil for all I know, but I just remember his name. He was really friendly, and then he helped me out. That's all I know. And I said, maybe if we go talk to him and we can find him, maybe he can help us save Zariel and then save Eltuel. And everyone's like, yeah, okay. And several very rude jokes later.
They weren't bad. They weren't Islamophobic. They thought you said Muhammad over the microphone. And I was like, that's right, he's the prophet of the Muslim faith.
I said Mahadi, not Muhammad.
Easy mistake. It's the most common first name in the world, man.
Yeah. True. But so now I am a little bit pleased that everyone, I hope everyone remembers this, that now they have a little side quest. Find Mahadi, the friend of the Holy Fans.
They won't remember. They never remember because they don't take notes.
They're going to meet him whether they want to or not.
They probably forgot who Zariel was again.
And so Lulu unlocked a memory. And Corvus, everyone did a little bit of exploring, and thanks to Slobberchops, they found a hidden doorway that was exposed by some rubble that fell on it and broke it after Corvus cast Shatter. And so they move all that stuff and they decide to go down. And Corvus, props to Corvus, he took some advice and he says, okay, I want to try interact with the environment a little bit more to see what I find. And there was even though this chapel is like torn to bits due to the fight, all the glass is shattered, there's bodies and bones everywhere, there was one thing still standing, and it was an altar to Lathander, the Morning Lord. And so he says, hey, Maestan, I don't know anything about this, because he failed a religion check. He says, can you do this for me?
He didn't fail the religion check. He refused to do it.
Oh, that's what it was.
He was like, I don't want to do the religion check. Would you do it for me, please?
Did Maestan really do it for him?
Yeah.
I should have rewarded Maestan. Oh my god, I should have rewarded Maestan. I totally overlooked that, because what happens with this altar is if you roll a religion check and you pray to it, Lathander will bless whoever is praying.
Connor is the one that prayed.
Yeah, Connor prayed. Oh yeah, that's what it was. Maestan figured out what it was, and then once he told him, yeah, this is an altar to Lathander, the Morning Lord. He's the god of life and birth, and he's like a huge nemesis to all death gods. And learning that, then Corvus said, okay, I want to try and pray to it real quick, seeing what would happen, which, good for him for trying something new. And it turns out that whoever prays at this altar, Lathander will gift them with a magical, it's technically called a +2 weapon, but it's just a magically enhanced version of whatever primary weapon they happen to be carrying around. So in Corvus's case, being a warlock, he got like this celestial-looking dagger with super shiny metal on the blade, a leather and gold-bound handle, and then a sun emblem on the hilt.
And it was a pretty easy attunement, too. I expected the attunement to be more difficult.
Yeah, he just did an Arcana check and then prayed to Lathander for like a minute, and he bound himself to it, so it was pretty cool. I'm still kind of getting used to the attunement stuff, because a lot of the magical items in both the Avernus book and the DM guide They say you have to attune to it, but attunement can be almost anything. Whether it's like studying the weapon, practicing with it, praying to a god. It's ultimately just up to the DM.
Lots of weapons and stuff, you gotta do it like over a short rest.
So I just, it's not a very big item. It's just a magically buffed dagger. So look at it, say a prayer to the god who gave it to you, you're good to go. After gaining that, they decide to go down into the underbelly of this chapel. Give me 1 second while I'm going through my notes. This underground passage, the stairway is dark, but once they get to the bottom of the stairwell, there's light at the end, and they walk into a room which is basically a ransacked mortuary. There's all kinds of embalming tools and fluids and everything, littering the floor, being broken. There's acid and embalming puddles everywhere, which I was kind of hoping to get a little bit of feedback from you, but
yeah, if you want to hear something funny, because once again, I'm a mortician and stuff. I work at a funeral home and etc. And like when I play Skyrim, I collect all the embalming tools from like the Draugr places, and I just throw them in my house. So whenever I play Skyrim, I have like a chest just full of embalming tools. Because I think it's cool, I steal them.
That's great. I know a guy on YouTube who he does a similar thing, except he does nothing but steal cheese wheels.
Yeah, I take all the embalming tools.
Oh, that's great. But so the players are wanting to like perceive stuff, and I'm like, okay, so for this particular room, you can roll a perception check, but I'm going to tell you right now, go ahead and do a survival check instead. And my stand was like, oh, this could be bad. Survival.
And the name makes it sound scarier than it really is.
Yeah, all survival checks do is just tell whether or not you're good at tracking animals or other people.
Are these berries safe to eat?
Exactly. And basically, after doing so, not only did they find a little bit more information about the room, but he also found a set of tracks that would have come from both devil or demon-like creatures and a couple sets of human footprints. I specifically said Sabaton boots, which if you don't know what a Sabaton is, that's basically a metal foot covering for a knight's shoe.
I didn't know what that was.
I looked it up what it was because one of my favorite bands is called Sabaton. But
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so they follow the tracks a little bit, and they did miss a room, but one of the players, Corvus...
Yeah, because there was that gate, and then Keocat messaged me again without saying it to the group, and she was like, I wanted to go through the gate. And I was like, you just have to say it. They would have gone. You just have to say it. You poor girl.
Oh, bless her heart.
Hopefully once her, like, thesis is done, and she's a doctor and stuff, and hopefully she will be less stressed and anxious and just be able to open up to everybody but me. She's open to me. She just doesn't want to. She feels like she's in like. If she feels like if she says what she wants to do, then someone else won't get to do what they want to do.
Which honestly, if you ask me, I would love to see more roleplay from Keocat because certain other players take way too damn long doing nothing.
You all suck. You don't suck. Every group is like this.
Do not mistake our jesting and ribbing for crude and cruel bullying. We are not bullying you because every group goes through sessions where they make their DM want to pull their teeth out.
And so when they're walking to where they're about to be, they're like stopping at every door, and you're like, do you go through the door? And my stand's like, I guess I'll go through the door. And he walks through the door, and then no one follows him, and you're like, is anyone gonna go with him or not? And then it's silent, and you're like, is my mic on? And they're like, yeah, of course. Why? And it's like, because you're not
answering.
You're not telling me what you want to do. So they'll go through that, and then they'll just stand in that room like looking around, and you're like, all right, are you gonna keep going? And they just like walk through a door and pause, like they're waiting. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, D&D. Now, some people might like a rail shooter experience. I personally don't, and I don't want to force my players down a set path. I try my best to give them as much freedom to the point where it's not going to waste too much of the other player's time. But if I am merely a CPU, I control the world as you interact with it. If you're just standing there in a doorway, you're standing there in a doorway. I can't tell you to move through it. You have to tell me where you're going.
Oh, Lord.
So basically, as they explore more of this room, they find out that this is a burial chamber and a mortuary for the internment of the dead. And Myastan prays at a couple of holy symbols, which he better be glad he didn't touch, because they were all corrupted by evil magic, and had any of those magical symbols been touched, they would have radiated necrotic energy, dealing 15 damage every minute for an hour.
It's a good thing I wasn't playing because I'm a very touchy character. Like, if I had already introduced Narishiko, she would have touched him. Like, 100%.
And you would have killed the party.
Because I've recently been thinking a lot about what I'm going to do with her, and I'm like, she's going to be very hands-on. She's going to grab stuff. She's going to touch stuff. So she would have done it. She would have screwed that up.
And basically skipping over some of the less interesting details, because at this point it was like I was trying to push them through the area, because it's like, okay, you open the door, now you need to move through it, I'll tell you what you see.
Yeah, you even because they were supposed to run into a couple devils down there.
Actually, specifically in the encounter, there was supposed to be a infernal giant scorpion that they were supposed to fight, followed by a bunch of dretches, which are basically the demonic version of imps. But I just got rid of it because, one, Corvus was saying that he had to leave at a certain time.
Yeah, I love how he tells us when he has to leave an hour before instead of, at the beginning of the session, so we can pace everything.
One, I don't feel bad about leaving out the dretches and scorpion because they were already half dead by the time they finished fighting the necromancer.
Yeah, because they just focused on...
And two, there was, as I said, the time crunch with Corvus, because another round of combat could have taken up to another hour. But so I just kind of pushed them along.
I mean, they probably would have been fine, but we needed it time-wise, because our goal today was to get to them at the chains, ready to go down or already down them.
Yeah, my goal was to have them getting ready to or be down on Avernus's floor by the end of the session.
Yeah, so continue, my good man. We got a big reveal coming up.
So they follow through the next set of rooms, and they come to finally the end of the hallway, which there was actually a secret door they could have unlocked, but no one rolled high enough perception.
Yeah, too bad.
And then...
What was in it? Just tell the audience what was in it. Because you can't say there was a secret door and then not say what was in it, okay, you know what I mean?
Let me see. It was a collapsed hidden... It was a collapsed hidden passage that would go all the way back to the High Hall.
So it's just a shortcut.
Yeah.
A shortcut where they wouldn't have to have any encounters on the way back.
Yep. A couple of strength checks and they could have gone all the way back.
Basically the same thing that's at the end of every single dungeon in Skyrim.
Yeah, pretty much. Just a shortcut.
Just a shortcut.
But I'm actually kind of glad sort of glad. They didn't. They decided to go back through Eltrell because they had another encounter, but we'll get to that soon. So the final room, it's this beautiful place of worship. There's this little wading pool that monks go to baptize and do all these other ceremonies and stuff. But this is a bad time to go to this place because in the water there's a bunch of dead demons and dead people, and there's blood and ichor mixing into the water. There's this mosaic made out of painted bone material that the people of Elchuel have organized, and it's very beautiful but also very morbid given the demonic influences. But the sole living person in this room is a man with a shield slung on his back, arms stretched out open as if receiving some kind of divine blessing, and he's on his knees, and he's got a helmet on his head, and he is just mumbling in what sounds like two different languages. He'll alternate between what sounds like a very soft, angelic voice and then a very deep, rough, demonic presence. And it's just going back and forth, back and forth. Kind of awesome.
And the language is changing with it, too. He's going from the demon's language to Celestial, right?
Yes, I even asked, I said, okay, does anyone speak demon or Celestial? And Connor almost says, I think I do. And I said, tell me what languages you speak. And he says... He lists them off, and I say, no, you don't.
He's probably remembering from his last character who spoke Celestial, and then we mocked him for it. Because we were like, your level 1 character speaks Celestial?
And then he said, someone brought up the subject about, what about his ability to understand other languages? That only works if he's reading. He can't understand spoken languages.
That was me. I misunderstood that. I didn't think he could speak any language, but I thought he could read and hear any language and understand it. I was wrong. That was my bad.
And then, so my stand says, okay, I'm going to go walk forward and see what's up. And Corvus says, hold on just a second. He says, hey, excuse me, sir. Who are you? And he continues to go back and forth into various languages, not even acknowledging their existence. And then he says it again even louder, still no response. And my stand said, okay, now I'm going in. And he says, just be careful. There's a lot of crap in that water, and this looks shady as all get out. And my stand's like, okay, I can see that, but I'll take that into consideration. Kind of pretentious if you ask me, just a little bit.
They're so fun. I love how they interact. It's so funny to me.
Very good roleplay dynamic. They love each other very well.
Did everybody get a fate point today?
I think so. Guinevere got...
Did Guinevere get one for the puppets?
I don't think so. I know she got the...
She should have.
I wish... Okay. I'll make a note to give her a fate point for that later.
Everyone deserved one today.
My stand got one for the roleplay with Rhea at the beginning.
Yes.
And Connor got a fate point because of his roleplay with Lulu that helped her unlock a memory.
Yes.
So I need to give Guinevere... In fact, I can go ahead and do that now.
And the thing is, you are actually very reserved with the fate points. In fact, sometimes I think you forget they exist.
Really? Because I don't forget. I'm not as experienced as...
Karen's pretty liberal with them, but I think you give them out... I think it should be something hard to get.
And that's the thing. When I gave one to my stand and I gave one to Corvus, I thought, okay, I've given out 2 fate points this session. Am I giving out too many? I don't know.
No, I didn't think you gave out too many. I don't think anyone should get more than 1 a session. I think that should be a limit for sure. But I don't think you've ever given out too many, ever.
I've gone ahead and given Guinevere, because I have a copy of a virtual copy of Guinevere's stat sheet, and I've gone ahead and added her a fate point right now so I don't forget.
You should probably let her know, too, so she can add it on her copy, since she didn't level up.
Now, normally in this session, there's like a whole ritual that has to go through with like the helm and everything. But luckily the book does have an alternative outcome to this that does not require the ritual, where you can just get through this so the players can get into the meat of the next session, which I love. And basically I loved the reveal for this. This kind of had a nice build up to it in my mind. My sense says, I want to try and take the helmet off of him. And I said, okay, it doesn't just pop right off. There's a little bit of resistance, much like how there's a vacuum seal on like a syringe. It's coming off, but it doesn't come off right away. And said, you take it off, and the guy wearing the helmet immediately stops chattering. And he kind of slumps over, his head down. He looks exhausted. And they said, sir, can you understand me? Are you okay? And he with much exhaustion, he stands up, hunches over, turns around, and I have pictures of all the illustration art for this stuff just to kind of help the players get an idea about what things and people look like.
Connor thought he was really attractive.
I said he's got... This is a gentleman who is bald-headed, has a few scars on his face, but is very handsome in depiction.
Well, he's a good-looking guy. Yeah. I saw those pictures and I was like, this guy, he's handsome and he's got style. Like this guy.
And if you ever read his stat block, he's actually a pretty good fighter.
Whoa, I bet.
But he turns around and I said, the first thing you notice, other than this man's handsome features, is he has a sigil on the chest of his armor. It is a familiar one to you, as it is a balled-up red fist surrounded by flame, a flaming fist logo. And I said, I'm doing much. And he said, I'm doing much better now, thanks to you. My name is Older Ravengard. How can I thank you for your assistance?
And here's the crazy part. They actually remembered who he was and that they were looking for him.
And Corvus was like, oh, that's Older Ravengard. And I think Kyoka even said something, and Maestro was like, oh, wow. We weren't expecting to see this guy.
I love, he asked like her name and stuff, and whenever someone asks her name, she goes, Guinevere, I'm a cat.
Which I think is awesome.
It's so cute.
Okay, so here's a little bit of a side tangent. Tabaxi, they're very fickle creatures. Like, even though they're bipedal humanoids, they have the attention span.
Quote-unquote humanoids.
They have the attention span and personalities of actual cats. A Tabaxi's interests will change on the fly. So the fact that she's always like looking to engage with stuff and then just like, I don't care what that person says, I'm going to do my own thing. That is so good That's such good role play.
Which is an accident, because that's just what she's like in real life.
I don't care. She's great. I love it. Everybody's great, but Guinevere has her own quirks that I just think are awesome for her character.
Yeah, I love our group so much. I love playing with them.
So everyone's like, oh, wow, it's Older Ravengard. What do we do? And the Older's like, I have to return to High Hall. I have news about what I've seen through the helm of Torm's sight. And Mystand's like, is this what you're talking about? And he's like, yes, that's the helm. Quickly, we mustn't delay. And it's kind of pushing close to the 5 o'clock mark, which is where Connor needs to go. But everyone wants to continue with the story because now it's like getting to the meat of it. He says, wait, I will still want to explore the
3 rooms.
The 3 rooms that we haven't gone through.
And you did kind of like a speed run of the 3 rooms.
And I said, okay, real quick, does anybody else want to search the rooms? And I don't think Mystand or Guinevere was interested in doing that. They just wanted to kind of leave.
Yeah, in all fairness, Keokat didn't feel super great today. I think it's just like she had a stomach and headache by the end of the session, and she was like, I want oatmeal and a nap. She just wanted to eat and sleep.
And so no one else really wanted to go through the other rooms, and I was having feelings that this could just take a lot more time than it needed to. So I said, okay, here's what I need you to do.
Just roll 3 perceptions, and I'll give you what's in each one.
And he rolled 2 13s and a 21. I said, okay, on the 2 13s you find nothing special. There's just rooms that you would see in a religious mortuary. I said, but the 21, you do happen to find a secret compartment. And honestly, the secret compartment, it's there, but the book just kind of says you as the DM can select what treasures you want. We recommend no more than 3 items, but go ahead. And so I said that this is a wizard's stash. And I told them that there is a potion of fire breathing, which is an item they're all familiar with.
Yeah, that's actually one of the group's favorite items.
Even though it's not very helpful in a world where most things are immune to fire and resistance to it.
But it's still one of their favorites.
Yeah. There was a item called... what's it called?
I don't remember. Well, you look it up. I also want to mention that Corvus was the only one that searched the bodies that were floating in the pool, and he got 3 magical spell scrolls. And normally, like, everyone shares loot. Like, Mystand shares loot. Guinevere shares loot. Corvus does not share loot.
No, he doesn't.
And it's like, there are 3 scrolls for a reason, but it's because there are 3 people here right now.
I almost forgot. Corvus actually did search the room with all the dead bodies where they found Older Ravengard.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, I forgot to go over that. I apologize.
No, it's fine.
So Corvus now, with doing these perception tests, he now has the lion's share of the magical items, which are supposed to be found by different people. He has the magical dagger that he received from the altar of Lathander. He has the treasure from the scrolls, and he now has the wizard's stash, which, yes, I found the item. Is in addition to the potion of fire breathing, he found a bottle of sovereign glue.
Right.
Magic adhesive that can only be unstuck by one specific item. And I honestly just threw it in there for the memes because I've heard so many people online say that sovereign glue is just a garbage item.
I'm surprised he didn't use it on that broken dagger he's got. Is it still broken? It's still broken.
Yeah, it's still broken. No one's mended it yet.
Keokat can mend it at any time. She just hasn't brought it up.
Well, and it's only because Connor hasn't asked her.
Yeah.
And then the other item was, I really wanted Keokat to get this item. It's a wand of web, which, if you're familiar with it, I won't go into too much detail in case Corvus hears this before they actually get a
This one goes up 5 weeks after we're recording it.
Okay, so yeah, we'll be well through that then. So basically, this is just a wand that has 7 charges of the web spell in it, which you basically get to shoot webs like Spider-Man 7 times before it has to recharge.
Yeah, and once again, 3 items. 3 players. Wonder what's happening here. And it's like you're supposed to split these up. If you find a little cachet of money, like, keep it all for yourself, whatever.
Yeah.
But if the group gets paid for a big job, split up money. But when you find a ton of loot, like, you remember the very first session of Karen's campaign we played?
Yeah.
And the middle of that session, after we all got paid and we found loot and stuff, we sat down in the inn and divvied it up amongst ourselves. Because if one person has all the magical items and all the cool stuff and they get knocked out, no one can use any of that stuff in combat, and everyone else is just hacking with swords, and it's just strategically not safe. especially if it's on his person. No offense to him, but this is like a strategic thing because he snipes, so he's usually way far away to even use these to help them.
Yeah, he doesn't. Granted, he doesn't have a lot of spell slots, but that's that comes with the territory of a warlock. Eldritch Blast is such a diverse tool that is supposed to make up for the lack of spell slots. But now he's hoarding all these magical items, and it's like, dude, share.
And his character is kind of just like that. Like it's so weird because his character does kind of have like a little thieving background, doesn't he?
Sort of.
And he's not technically stealing. Well, not from them. He's not stealing from his group members.
It's more like he has an agenda and he'll use anything at his disposal to do it. But that's still no excuse for being a little greedy.
Yeah, and we were even like, are you going to maybe want to share some items with the group? And he was like, I gave him 2 healing potions earlier.
And we just facepalmed.
We were like, okay, dude. That's fine.
So,
I mean, he can keep them. That's within his right. I feel like we're dissing on him way too much on this. We're not. We swear we love playing with them and they're good, but they do listen to this. So it's not like we're doing it behind their back either. This is to help them. Guys, please just think about things. Please. For Christ's sake. Do it. Do it for Harambe or something, man. I don't know.
So they do leave, and they have one last encounter in El Chuel before they get back to High Hall. And this was supposed to be kind of a funny little encounter to give them some extra information about their surroundings. Because I've been trying to get them for so long since they've been in El Chuel to be perceptive of what's going on outside the city walls. Take a look at how bad your situation is. It's not just bad food and gray skies. You have beings of power you can't even fathom just outside your door.
The most gruesome war in all existence is happening on the ground floor below you. So yeah, let's continue. Let's get them. Let's get them out.
So they're coming across a little alleyway, and there's a creature sitting in their path. And Corvus is like, I want to get a spell ready because I don't know what's going on. Which I don't blame him. I wouldn't either, especially if you were someone who's familiar with this creature. A Vrock. And if you're familiar with what a Vrock is, in the description I used, I said, okay, have you guys ever seen the movie The Dark Crystal? And Connor's like, no, I've never seen that movie. But Guinevere's like, is it a Skeksis? And I said, it's exactly a Skeksis. It's a Skeksis with wings.
She is a huge puppetry arts nerd. And Jim Henson is like her god.
Yeah, no, He's done amazing work, and the people who follow along in his legacy continue to do amazing work. But
I swear on Jim Henson's life, we'll let you go. Hey, you said you'd let us go. We studied under Brian Henson. Jim Henson's dead. Brian Henson. Workaholics joke.
No, I got it.
Yeah, I know you got it.
That's one of the few episodes I actually like. Just because of the animatronic raptors.
The raptors.
But so there's a Vrock, and normally demons, they've been built up to this point to be like really chaotic, evil, and mean, and they only want your heads on pikes and destroy all life. But this one's pretty chill. He's just kind of sitting in the middle of the road, feet crossed, a claw talon-shaped hand resting on his beak, and he's just deep in thought, mumbling to himself. And I actually kind of like role-playing this guy. He has a funny voice.
Yeah.
And He's very sincere, but he doesn't know how to act socially with people from the material plane. And Corvus approaches him, and everyone else is kind of behind him, and he says, hello there. And he goes, "Wah! Oh, hello there, meatbags." And I said, what are you doing here? And he says, well, what are you doing here? And you're a demon, right? He says, yeah, I'm a demon, all right. I just decided to leave the blood war for a minute and ponder my position in life. And do I really want to spend what short time I have dying for some bloated demon lord in the plague war or the blood wars, or do I want more out of life? What do you think? And the way this encounter is supposed to be set up is the Vrock talks to each person individually, and depending on like each person gets a charisma check, and each person did, and depending on how well they talk to him and how they roleplay, the Vrock can give them different information about Avernus, the Blood War, the different demon lords, stuff that they will need.
Because they interrogated that devil before, and it was like, okay, they got a lot of devil info from him. Now let's get that demon info with this encounter. And, like, so Corvus is, like, really interested in talking to this guy. And Keokat's like, no, I'm fine, I don't need to talk. And then he tried to talk to Mystan, and Mystan was like, you're a demon, man. I straight up, like, I don't care. You're a demon, screw you. I don't want to talk to you.
And the thing is, I even dropped a hint about some big, high-level demon lords, because when Ravengard was being woken up from his little dream state, he said that I was torn between two entities. I recognized one as Torm, and then there was another one who went by the name Baphomet, and no one bothered. I even said not Bahamut, Baphomet with a PH, and no one bothered to do a check on that name. And then the Vrock is this goldmine of information, depending on how well you do a charisma check. And he said, well, you all have given me some helpful information about my current philosophical predicament. Is there anything I can help with you or help you with? And they're like, nah.
And, okay, so we're doing this all socially distanced. Like, you and I are in the same room, but we sit 6 feet apart, and our camera, we have it up on a tripod facing down at the game board so everyone can see it. Luckily, I have a bunch of film stuff from when I worked in the industry and everything, so that we can do that. And then do they usually have their cameras on? I don't usually see their faces.
Connor will turn his camera on if he's doing specific gestures on how he's doing stuff, which I think is an awesome way to use the camera in the situation. But Keokat, I've never seen her with her camera on.
And that's because she's in pajamas.
Totally understood. Not judging anybody, just saying what I see. And Mystan will very rarely turn his camera on unless he just feels the need to do so.
But the thing is, they can't see either of us. And when he said no to this demon, I threw my hands up like, I give up, man.
I was kind of defeated too, a little. Not totally defeated, but I was just done with the encounter.
I was like, we put this in front of them for a reason, and they're like, you shouldn't fight in the Blood Bowl. You should just, like, go do something else. And he was like, okay, I guess I will, since you guys don't want...
Perhaps we'll see each other on the fiery fields again. Bye! And then Lulu and older Ravengard looked at each other from, like, the back of the group, and Lulu just went, what a freak!
You know, and it was such a waste of time. What a waste of time.
And then, so we do continue back to High Hall.
Guys, I know my listeners are hearing this. Guys, if we put one of these in front of you, it's for a reason. Literally everyone you meet is there for a reason.
Lulu even made a statement. He says, I hope you all enjoyed that encounter, because that's the nicest demon you'll ever meet. But they do get back to High Hall, and she's hiding, but she's waiting out in the main foyer for them to return. Rhea returns, seeing everybody beat up but still alive with older Ravengard, and she's like all excited, like, oh my god, you succeeded, this is fantastic, what happened? And they give a brief summary of what had happened with the necromancer and the demon and everything, and Alder's like, this is all well and good, but I am still hurting from my wounds and I'm exhausted, we need to return to safety. And they're like, oh yeah, of course, let's go do that. So they get everyone down into the catacombs again, and Alder gets bandaged up a little bit, and then he says, okay, I'm well enough that I can talk at length now. And this is basically what he tells them. He says, while he was wearing the helm of Torm's sight, he received a vision from the history. And earlier in the chapel, he actually pointed to Lulu. He says, I recognize you. I saw you in my vision. I feel like I know you somehow. And she's like, really? You know me? How do you know me? And he's like, well, I saw you when I was wearing the helm. And she said, how so? And he basically said that in his spirit journey, I saw a bloodied woman in armor, a soldier wearing the colors and crest of Elchuel, grasping a long sword fit for an angel. Fresh blood streamed from a nasty cut in the woman's neck. Flying next to the woman, a small golden elephant with rapidly fluttering wings, Lulu. As an enormous loping demon threatened to devour the woman, she plunged the sword into the ground while the winged elephant made a trumpeting sound with its trunk. The demon was hurled back as an alabaster palace rose up around the sword. The winged elephant fled and took to the red sky of Avernus, where it watched as a bloody scab grew from the ground to engulf the palace and the enormous demon. The winged elephant fled and wandered in a delirium before coming upon two odd bird-like humanoids, dressed in a patchwork armor and standing next to a strange infernal vehicle. The bird creatures were equipped with odd weapons and tools. And just like with Connor unlocking the memory for Lulu, Lulu kind of trails off for a second and then says, I remember this. I remember this happening. I don't know the names of the bird people. I don't remember the name of the woman. But I remember the giant demon. I remember the alabaster palace. I remember the sword, which was Zariel's sword, by the way. And I remember them helping me. And she kind of put pieces together. And basically what she deduced, she said, I remember they took me to a place called Fort Knucklebone. I remember that they were fairly friendly to me. And I'm sure if I got a lay of the land in Avernus that I could tell you where it is. And so they went back outside. She flew up into the air, did kind of like a little 360 turnaround, and she said, hey, guys, I see it. I see Fort Knucklebone. It's this giant ramshackled fortress built into the side of a cliff that literally from the air looks like a fist. There's a lot of fists in this series. Anyways, and she says, it's about a 10-mile hike from the floor beneath Elchuel. I said, but guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I saw the blood ward down there. It is not good. Which was meant to be a hint. Like, you know.
You're like, guys, please look. I want to read this cool block text so badly.
We have such sights to show you, but you won't look at them.
Hellraiser.
Yes. And so basically, they start talking with Ravengard and Rhea and everyone else, and they're like, okay, so we've done the hard work now. Now we have to figure out how to get down from here. Ravengard, did your vision tell you anything about how to get down? And he said, no. There's only two ways that I can think of off the top of my head. He said, you could either try and climb down the giant chains that are holding Elchuel to Avernus' surface, but with the blood war being down there, it's going to be awful risky in case you fall. And then he said, or you could try and somehow magically fly, either through some kind of contraption or through magical means, but I can't help you with any specifics. And so basically what the party decided was that they were going to try and fly, because Lulu is capable of carrying one person to fly, but no more. Corvus can now turn into the Raven and fly on his own, and Guinevere now has the talisman, or the charm of Featherfall, and Corvus is going to use his Imp and Raven to kind of help her travel more vertically, because Featherfall isn't flying, it's just slow fall.
Basically, Connor's going to go into the Raven, and then he's going to use that Raven body and order the Imp to kind of just basically pull her, like...
glide.
Yeah.
And so that's how they're going to get down from Avernus. And before they did anything, Stan went over to Rhea.
Oh, and of course, Slobberchops can fly on.
Yeah, Slobberchops is good to go. And Stan goes over to Rhea and she says, so are you coming with us? And she says, I'm afraid I won't be joining you this time. She says, Elchuel's people need me. There are so few defenders for them now that we have to band together. And saving Elchuel does no good if there's no one left in Elchuel to, be around.
If this was a CW show, this would be the part where a generic pop song played in the background while they said goodbye.
And Maya Stan basically says, I take back what I said earlier. You were right to tell the people the truth, and I see that they will be stronger and resolved because of it, and I hope that you continue to do the best job that you possibly can as the Hell Rider. And Rhea she tears up a little bit. She cries a lot in this session. She's been through a lot.
Poor Rhea.
But she's grown an attachment, and so she stands at attention, gives a Hell Rider salute, and she says, and I hope that you bring light. I hope you bring the light of Bahamut to wherever you go, and you fulfill your duty and do the best dang job as a paladin you possibly can.
She and Maya Stan should have smashed. I ship them.
Well, Myson already has a love interest.
Yeah, he did dictate that in a letter in front of everybody. And
It's
then
more
Guinevere
like
really wants to know, but she's scared to ask him.
Well, it's also not good because Ray's like 16 years old.
Oh, crap, really?
Yeah.
I thought she was like in her 20s.
No, she is a very new Hell Rider, but she's like a graduate.
Oh, I guess that's so she's not too strong when she helps the party, probably.
Yeah. But it's more like a bond of brothers and sisters in arms.
Man, now I look like a perv. Thanks, man.
You said it, not me.
You're the one that... never mind.
I even
Just get to... We're done, okay? It's over. Podcast canceled.
No. But anyway, so there's a tearful goodbye. An older Raven Guard, he doesn't salute them, but he gives them a nod like good luck and Godspeed. And that's where the session ends. The next session, they will formally descend Avernus, and we'll pick it up from there. Which was where I wanted us to be at the end of the session anyway, and I think it was like 5:05 by the time we finished. So we were right on time for our finish mark.
Yeah. It all worked out. Yo. Ooh, that was a lot, dude. That was...
They're still not safe yet. There is no...
Yeah.
There's
no safe.
Moments of peace, but there is no safety. I'm so stoked that we are finally now on Avernus's floor, because...
That's where I've wanted to be this whole time.
And I know they've been wanting to get there, and I've definitely been wanting to get there. There was just some sloggy moments.
There's so much to look forward to. Mad Maggie, Mahadi, the Abishai.
Zariel, the Abishai, and of course, because it's an Abishai, Tiamat.
Of course, yeah, all the Tiamat stuff.
Not to mention the various archdevils and demon lords they will meet along the way. Ooh.
Guys, it's not about the treasure. It's about the archdevils and demon lords we met along the way. Oh man, that was a good session. It was only about an hour longer than our last few, but we got so much done.
Yeah, this was a great session. Funny, face-palmy, and productive. As much as we have talked about the goofs, I thought it was one of the best sessions we've had so far.
Yeah, very enjoyable. So that is it for this one, everyone. It's been over an hour 40, so I'm sure you're ready to move on. I'm sure you got to work on your commute a while ago. So that is it. Thank you all very much for your support. Remember to rate, comment, subscribe. Remember, if you're listening to this on YouTube, these episodes come out much sooner on podcast streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Anchor, etc. If you want to support us, there's donation links, merch, a Patreon, etc. in the description, as well as our YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and everything. All these different places where you can find stuff about our podcast, videos, and more. So that is it. Thank you all once again, and we will see you all next time.